So we've reached the sixth Mishnah of the first chapter of Sefer Yetzirah. Eser Sfirot Blima. As all the Mishnayot in this chapter, at least the most of them, begin with the phrase about the Eser Sfirot. It continues, Sviatan Kimarei HaBazak. Sviatan, our ability to, the spot is to observe or to contemplate. The tzpot could be translated as to see, but generally the word the tzpot in Chazal texts have something more contemplative than the mere physical action of seeing. Sviatam kimare abazak. Your ability to contemplate them or see them is like kimare abazak, like a bolt of lightning. A bolt of lightning, as we know, is only a fragment of a second. V'tachlitan ein lem kes. On one hand, our ability to observe them is so fragmented. It's for a split second we're able to grasp something. Although their essence is tachlitan ein lem kes, are endless. So there's a paradox between the endlessness of the world of Sfirot, on the other hand, our such limited ability to contemplate them. The Mishnah continues again with a reformulation of that paradox. V'dibru behen rotzeh v'shuv, and speak about them in rotzeh v'shuv. Rotzeh is to run, shuv is to return. Some dialectic of going and returning. Ulamamaro kisifa yurdafu, but to the word of God, like a sufa, like a storm, you run after it. So we have some sort of a tension between something which is infinite, without end, and something which is very limited, our ability to touch on this reality and grasp it. Now, some of these phrases here are well known to us because they appear in the first chapter of Sefer Yecheskel. Sefer Yecheskel, the first chapter, is what's called the Maseh Merkava, a vision Yecheskel has of the realm of the heavens. And this is the Haftorah on Chag HaShavuot, because Chag HaShavuot is when the giving of the Torah, where we had the greatest encounter between heaven and earth, and a lot of the Kabbalah or Maseh Merkava is to see as symbolic this vision of Yecheskel and interpret what is the message, what is that message that Yecheskel experienced. Although sometimes I think symbolic might not be a strong enough word. For years I worked with something called, in Hebrew would be Dimyon Novea. Dimyon would be imagination, but it's not, there's techniques that try to evoke the inner images in somebody's inner world. And the evoking of those inner images, you see all sorts of things that don't really correspond to anything in reality. But by their contemplation, you learn a lot about yourself and your inner world. And after studying this approach to visualization, one insight that this gives insight about the realm of prophecy. The prophecy comes to people as often as not as words, but as images. So it's not only symbolic. It could be the image of something more than symbolic, but certainly it does reflect a greater reality than the image itself. So Yecheskel has these images, and part of the challenge of Jewish mysticism is to interpret what are these images all about. And in that vision of Yecheskel, it talks about that the chayot are these animals that he's envisioning are brotza v'shov, and they're constantly oscillating, going back and forth, going forward and coming back, and the K'mareh Bazak, like bolts of lightning. So clearly the author of Sefer Yetzirah is linking us to the book of Yechezkel, and in fact is giving his commentary to what is that image of Yechezkel. The author of Sefer Yetzirah sees the Ma'aseh Merkava of Yechezkel, seeing those dynamics and interactions of these angels, heavenly angels. It's about a glimpse into the realm of the world of the Sfirot. I mean, that's probably the most important statement that is being made here. We have the tension between their infinite depth, but our limited ability to grasp. But that's the specific statement that's being made here. But the context is also critical. It keys us in how to look anew at the whole story of Yechezkel and read it as telling us about the dynamics between the 10 Sfirot. And then this Mishnah ends, like all the Mishnayot in this parak, or most of them, that after the multiplicity, going back and bringing us back to the one. That the last statement in this Mishnah is V'lifnei kis'o heim mishtachavim, and before the chariot, the chair, they bow down. In the vision of Yechezkel, there is the Kisei HaKavod, the divine chair, which is above it all. And here, the author is saying that all of these, everything in the vision, which is we now know is all the Sfirot, they all bow down. They all show their subservience to the one chair, to the Kisei that is above all. Similar to the previous Mishnah, for example, that defined the 10 Sfirot as a 5-dimensional world, the 6 directions, past, future, and good and evil. But then saying that all of these 10 amakim, depths, are Adon Yachid El Melech Ne'aman, the one master, the faithful king, Moshel Bekulam Mima'on Kadsho Ad Adayad. That there brings us back to the one. Or in the Mishnah before that, we spoke about the 10 Sfirot as paralleling, our 10 fingers as paralleling the 10 Sfirot, with a dialectic of 5 opposing 5, but we have the one that connects us. Brit Yachid, a singular covenant, Mechuvan B'emsa, in the middle point, B'milat HaLashon, Milat HaMor. So again, this is another structure which is very significant, saying that Sfirot, which is connected to the Hebrew word mispar, numbers, it tells us that there's a lot of multiplicity in the world, in reality. But realize, creation is about creating multiplicity. But the search for the divine is going back and seeing how all this connects up to the one. Now, we'll go on to the 7th Mishnah, which again talks about the multiplicity and the connection. Eser Sfirot Blima. Nu'utz Sofan B'tchilatan, V'tchilatan B'sofan. The end is embedded in the beginning. The beginning is embedded in the end. There is a beginning, there is an end, there is a whole process, but somehow the end and the beginning are each embedded in each other. Again, giving us a view of a oneness, of this continuity that all is connected, all is one. What comes to mind here, and I'll tell you why it's important maybe to mention this, is that I believe that there's a famous statement, Sof Maseh B'Machshavat Tchila, that your ultimate action goes back to the original machshava, the original thought. Now this shows up in some medieval Jewish books, but it's been pointed out that in our literature, it's actually a quote from some Islamic mystical works. I think it's of Al-Razali, but the idea which is quoted as a name of a Chacham, and apparently it's a direct quote of something in Al-Razali, but the idea itself of the end being embedded into the beginning goes well before the origin of Islam. It goes back to Sefer Yetzirah, about the end being embedded into the beginning, and the beginning has the potential already of that of the end.
It's like a circle.
Right. Good, right.
Muslim said the world was one, and ended up saying that the world was a sphere.
So the world, wow, beautiful. So the world being one, the world would be a sphere. So even if you said the word sphere, we could even connect the word sphere into sphera, right? The hemisphere. So we have Ne'ut Sofan b'tchilatan b'sofan. Ki shalhevet kshura b'gechelet. The same way that shalhevet, which is a flame, is connected to the coal. Without the gechelet, without the coals, the shalhevet, the flame, cannot exist. Without the flame, that gechelet would not be expressing itself. So there's this interconnection between the gechelet and the shalhevet. Now, often this phrase of nu'ut sofan b'tchilatan b'sofan is used to express the relationship between the first and the last of the 10 sfirot. The first sfira being the keter, the crown, and the last sfira being the malchut, the kingship. And the connection between the keter and the malchut, sometimes in Hebrew, keter is called ein, nothingness, aleph yud nun, where malchut is connected to ani, I, which is something very tangible, and then connecting to the nothingness, the untangible, into that most concreteness within the world of the Sfirot, which would be the ani, the malchut. So I think these are insights are all true, but in this Mishnah, I would see the interpretation as being something else. I see this phrase that the end is embedded in the beginning, and the beginning and the end has not the relationship, not necessarily the relationship between the first sphira and the 10th sphira, but the relationship of the ultimate divinity to the sphirot themselves. Because in Sefer Yetzirah, you have the 10 sphirot, but these are an expression of the ultimate divinity, which is beyond, or that expression of the 10 sphirot. So here we'll be saying that we have that ultimate divinity, and this is expressed in the 10 sphirot. But that ultimate divinity, it's, as I said, expressed within the sphirot. So the sphirot are something imminent, the expression of that divinity, and that potential that was developed in 10 sphirot was embedded in that source. And now we'll get to what could be my favorite phrase in Sefer Yetzirah. It's a hard competition, but here we return again to the one. Shadon Yachid ve'ein lo sheni. The master, and said Yachid is more like unique. It's not Adon Echad. It's not one master. It's could be the unique master. Ve'ein lo sheni. There is no number two. One problem to say that you're number one implies that there's number two. But in talking about the ultimate divinity, to say one, the one, implies some connection to something else which doesn't grasp that essence which is truly beyond. So what do we say? How do we try to attempt to grasp the oneness of God, and to realize that one is not just a precedent to two? I remember one of my daughters, when she was in playgroup, she was learning Shema Yisrael and had to count to 10 at the same time. And she was very tired and she's going to sleep, and I hear her saying, Shema Yisrael, Hashem Elokeinu, Hashem Echad, Shtayim, Shalosh, Arba, 1, 2, 3, 4. That really grasp the problem with one is, one implies there's also two. So how do we go beyond the world of numbers? Beyond the world of Sfirot, a world that doesn't have numbers, that precedes numbers. What's the way to say it? Sefer Yetzirah found a wonderful way to express it. V'lifnei echad ma ata sofer. Before one, what do you count? So, and I think it's here that Rav Aryeh Kaplan points out that there's something in Zen Buddhism called koan. Koan is an attempt to open up someone's consciousness by giving a question that doesn't have a defined answer, but the question itself opens up your consciousness to something which is beyond. And this statement really would be a good example of such a phenomenon. Before one, what do you count? And remember, zero is a relative late invention. To say that there is, so it's not, God is not one. It's because we have to say one is a starting point. Sometimes I even think in the Ten Commandments, the second commandment is Lo yeh Elohim achirim al panai. Don't have other gods. The first statement is saying not. In the Ten Commandments we say not to, right? Not to. Don't have another god. Right in that same parsha in Boet Hanan, afterwards we have the Shema Yisrael, which is in many ways a summary, or it catches the essence of the Ten Commandments. Hashem Elokeinu parallels Anochi Hashem, I am God. Hashem Echad, God is one, is continuing, don't have other gods. But certainly we get to a more powerful statement, going from don't have other gods, don't have two, to a statement God is one. God is one is much more powerful and deeper than saying not two. But then Sefer Yetzirah really takes us another step. Sefer Yetzirah says that it's not enough to say not two. We say not one. But to realize not one doesn't mean two. Not one means in divinity we're looking for something deeper than what oneness, that limited concept, could contain. Okay, so
That's right.
Okay. Now we'll go on to Shir.
You just said ריבוע and ורצו ושוב. So what's the relativeness between רצו ושוב and אדון יחיד ואין לו שני?
The ultimate divinity, it's oneness, or it's before oneness. The dynamics of the reality that we live in, the multiplicity allows dynamics. And that dynamics and that multiplicity is taking place in the realm of our reality and in the world of the Sfirot, which is the spiritual realm which our reality is a reflection of. But above that realm, we have the ultimate oneness, which is beyond names, multiplicity, and also dynamics. So the Ratzah V'Shov is not related.
Three
Exactly. There's the ultimate divinity, which is beyond language. There's the world of the Sfirot, which are blima, without, they're not concrete. These are spiritual realities or constructs. But there is dynamics and multiplicity, and our world is a reflection of that. Okay, now we get to the 8th Mishnah. Eser Sfirot Blima. Blom picha miledaber, v'libcha mileharer. Blom, hold back your mouth from talking, and your heart from thinking. V'im ratz picha ledaber, and if you don't manage to stop yourself and you talk, v'libcha mileharer, or something which is obviously even more difficult to stop, you stop from thinking, shuv lemakom, return to the place. Shelakach ne'amar v'chayot rotzeh v'shuv, that the chayot are going running back and forth. Val davar ze nichrat brit, and on this, the brit, the covenant, has been made. Okay. Here we have. First of all, we get we said the word blima has two meanings. Part of the beauty of Sefer Yetzirah, that it's clear that there are multiple meanings to some of, not only multiple commentaries, but in fact the text itself is meant to have multiple meanings. Certainly the word blima, in describing the 10 Sfirot, certainly blima, one of the meanings is bli ma, without tangibility, because that's a paraphrase of the word in the book of Eov that says tole eretz al blima, that the world is hanging on blima, on a void, on nothingness. However, here the use of the statement blom picha, when you're dealing with the Sfirot, you must do blima, is giving us a second meaning to the word, to blima, because to be bolem your thoughts and your speech, blima is to, in Hebrew, livlom is to break, to hold back. Livlom is to hold back your speech, to hold back your thoughts. And then the 10 Sfirot are connected to something which is constricts or hold back, a way to perhaps hold back the infinite nature of divinity, which would not allow a world to exist, a world that has boundaries. We need the blima. We need the holding back. So the blima is holding back, is what allows things to exist. But now the question is, what does it mean when we give a guideline to somebody that in encountering the world of the Sfirot, to hold back your speech and your thought? Rav Aryeh Kaplan, in his commentary to Sefer Yetzirah, argues in general that Sefer Yetzirah is a manual that, based on forms of meditation. In some places it's more powerful, in some places less. But here it's clear that this statement of stop your speech, stop your thought, is referring to a meditative technique. Much of meditation is learning how to stop your thoughts, realizing that the rush of your thoughts is what interferes with your ability to get to a state of true being and consciousness, to truly be present, to truly be conscious of the reality inside of you and outside of you. What most interferes with that is that endless stream of words, whether it's the spoken word or the thoughts that fill your mind. Much of meditation are different techniques how to stop your thoughts. It could be by reciting a mantra many times, and by doing that, by being involved with saying the mantra, that quiets your mind and allows you to get to that state of pure consciousness. So clearly, and I'll mention, it says in the Mishnah and Brachot, it says the Hasidim Arishonim would be shoheh sha'achat before prayer. For a full hour, they would stop before prayer in order to direct their hearts to the place, lamakom. And the question is, what did they do during that hour? But it's clear they weren't saying things, they weren't saying Tehillim. The Rambam says that they would stop their thoughts. It would be a form of meditation for an hour before prayer, in order for the prayer to come from a place of higher consciousness. So it's clear that this Mishnah is a call for stopping speech and thoughts in order to encounter a higher state of consciousness, which is necessary to experience the realm of the Sefirot. However, we know the painful reality is how difficult this is. If I say stop thinking, if you could do that for a few seconds, you're really good. And even if you've worked on meditation for a long time, the ability to let you control your thoughts and not have your thoughts control you is very limited. So this is reality about your mind wandering, running, and then you have to bring it back, is a reality that we all know. And here Sefer Yetzirah says that's what Achayot Rotzeh V'Shov are all about. That feeling of lightning, that feeling of going back and forth, it's that experience that we aren't able to really stay focused in our consciousness, but it really oscillates and goes back and forth. What I'd like to suggest, and here I believe I differ from the commentary of Rav Kaplan. Rav Kaplan explains that Shuv Lamakom, return to the place, means pretty much to start over. That if your thoughts start wandering, don't give up. Shuv Lamakom, go back, start over, and try again. I think Shuv Lamakom is saying don't return to the starting point, but Shuv to the Makom in the meaning and context of the Makom as being the divine, the realm of the divine. Like we know that Makom is used as a name of God. Like when we to mourners we will say Hamakom Yenachem Otchem. May the place, may the Makom comfort you. So and I also believe that this Mishnah in Sefer Yetzirah has a dialogue with the Mishnah I quoted earlier from Brachot that said that the Chasidim Rishonim Hayu Shohim Sha'achat Lechavein et Libam Lemakom. For an hour they would wait in order to direct their hearts to the Makom. So I think clearly Makom is the place of the divine. In fact, in some versions of Sefer Yetzirah, includes that famous statement about God, She'akadosh Baruch Hu Makom Shel Olam. God is the place of the world, Ve'ein Olam Mekomo, but not that the world is His place. So God as the place is a concept that appears also elsewhere in Sefer Yetzirah. Okay, and yet again, after this dialectic, we end with saying, Val davar zeh nichrat Brit. The Brit with God has to do about this dynamics. Again, the Brit returning us to that place of the one, accepting our limitations, of focusing on that place, on that spot, but not giving up, and to in that search, and in general that concept of Rotzeh V'Shov, going back and forth. It's a very central concept in life and Avodat Hashem. And my friend Rabbi Elchanan Nir has a book, Rotzeh V'Shov, which goes back from the book of Yecheskel through Sefer Yetzirah, through Rabbi Nachman and other approaches to really get to the heart and significance of that important concept. Sof davar, hakol nishma, et ha'elohim yira, ve'et mitzvotav shmor, ki zeh kol adam.